My name is Jesse Davis, host of the Penthouse podcast, where I interview a lot of my longtime friends, some of the members of my club, and some of Wilmington's finest people. I am so excited to do this show, and I hope you will tune in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Penthouse podcast. My name is Jesse Davis, and I'm delighted today to have our first podcast about my relationship with Elizabeth Taylor. It started back in the early 2000s when I lived in Los Angeles, and we cultivated such a great close friendship. And so many people today seem to be curious and intrigued, and so I'm here today to kind of talk about it.
All right, and I'm Zach Weaver. I'm one of the producers on the podcast. I'm going to just be asking a few questions about Elizabeth Taylor because she's a very fascinating person to me. But first thing I want to ask is, when and how did you first meet Elizabeth Taylor?
So basically, there's a misconception out there that I worked for her. So, truth be told, I was really good friends with her assistant, Tim Mendelson. He was her assistant for over 30 years, and her nurse, Shannon Gordon, who Shannon, a lot of motorcycles out there today. Anyway, so yeah, Shannon and I are still good friends. Tim and I haven't spoken to him in years. I tried to reach out to him, but I don't know, sometimes with non-disclosures, he worked for her for so long, I'm sure maybe it's a sensitive subject. But anyway, Tim, love you. Hope you're listening one day. I owe it to you for meeting her. Tim was gay, and I introduced him to a lot of friends, and we all actually just became a little posse. And there's a lot of TMZ stuff out there. You can Google Jesse Davis, Elizabeth Taylor, and a lot of the stuff comes up. A lot of fun stuff. She was also getting, she was in her later years. She was in her 70s. So I wasn't friends with her for many, many, many years, but I was friends with her for a long enough. And we had such a special relationship. And I met her, obviously I was the VIP manager at the Abbey in West Hollywood for a long time. And I didn't necessarily meet her through that place. I did meet her through people that came there. So yeah, that's pretty much how I met her, was through Tim and Shannon.
Nice. When you met her, were you aware of her stature as a movie star at the time?
So what got me was, do you remember the commercial about she pulled the earring off and she said, "Oh, these have always brought me luck"?
Yeah, sure.
That's how I remembered her, was from that commercial. It was a black and white Diamonds commercial. And I remember as a kid watching that commercial. I mean, they played the same commercial for a long time. It was the signature commercial for the brand. And so I was kind of blown away when he was like, "Oh, well, you don't really, like Elizabeth Taylor is like, who I work for." And he's like, "You've got to meet her." I'm like, "Yeah, of course, let's meet her." I mean, I was the VIP manager. I dealt with most of the celebrities that came through the Abbey. I made sure that they got in safe and sound. I mean, we had security that I had security that also maneuvered things to get them in, and there was always comp bottles and private sections, and I usually sat with them and I drank with them and I partied with them, and I sort of I brought the fun, and that's kind of still what I do up here. But yeah, I met her. It was a long time ago, and it was a very special relationship for sure.
What do you think about you attracted her to you? Like, what did she see in you?
God, I think it boils down to the fact that maybe I looked like some of her friends when she was younger. I know that she used to call me her little Montgomery Cliff, and a lot of her friends have said, friends of mine still now, they're older Elizabeth Taylor fans, are like, "You do look like Montgomery Cliff." And I was like, I don't see it, but whatever. But no, I think she was such good friends with her, and they were all homosexuals in Hollywood, and back then it was very much, you didn't talk about it. They were very much closeted. They played straight roles on movies. I mean, I think some of the movies they were couples in the movies. I mean, and the sad thing is Rock Hudson, and then you had James Dean, Jimmy Dean, and she called him Jimmy, and it was wild. They were hanging out the day that he died, and got in the car crash, and I'm sure all those relationships back then, to be on set and playing a character and having to immerse yourself into this character world and play pretend, basically, but off the cameras and outside, away from all the paparazzi and all the journalists and everything. It's just wild to me because that life, I was in it. I lived there. I lived in Hollywood. I lived in Beverly Hills. I had a really amazing life there. And I think we attracted each other. I mean, we really did. I wasn't really interested in her celebrity. I wasn't really, when I really got to know her, she, like I said, we did a little thing for WWAY, and she was basically like my LA grandma. There were no relation. We weren't, like I said, she wasn't my grandmother. I love my grandmother. My grandma gets a little jealous every now and again when you talk about that. But so she and I just clicked, and it started with lunches at the Abbey, and then it was dinners at her house, and then it was dinners out in restaurants, and then next thing you know, she's chasing me around to like hang out, and we're going to like the hottest clubs in LA and just having a good old time. I mean, literally, it was fun to get picked up by a driver with a Maybach and to kind of have paparazzi chasing you around and ride in motorcades and go on yachts for 4th of July. And, we shared a lot of, like, I think the most quality time we had was in her bedroom at her house. I mean, that is definitely, and a lot of celebrities that knew her closely can tell you the same stories. I mean, that's what she did. I think that's what she did with people that she really genuinely cared about. She wanted to bring you in her room, in her place where there were no cameras, there were no journalists, there were places where we could just kind of just share some funny stories. I mean, I had a boyfriend at one time, and then we were fighting all the time, and she would always tell me, she'd say, sometimes fighting is healthy. I mean, fighting, sometimes you learn boundaries, you learn each other's sort of, you learn each other's buttons, what to push and not to push. And so she did tell me one time that, fighting is not all that bad, to fight with your husbands or boyfriends or girlfriends or wives or whatever, non-binary, transgender, whatever. But no, she was very much my closest celebrity friend that I met in Los Angeles while I lived there.
One thing I've always thought was pretty fascinating about her was that after her third marriage, or right after she got married to Mike Todd, she converted.
Which might have been the love of her life.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he died in a plane crash.
Right. But after their marriage, she converted to Judaism.
Uh-huh.
Was this a part of her that she ever talked about in front of you?
You know what? We didn't really talk about the past. I mean, she was very much so intrigued with what was in, what was hip, what was cool, what was cutting edge. I mean, I didn't really go into this with the network, but Christian Audiger, he was a designer back then. I don't know if he's around much anymore, but all his clothes are bling blingy, bling shiny, all this in which, oh my gosh. So one day, she's like, let's go shopping. And I was like, okay, cool. Let's go shopping. Let's go fucking shopping, Elizabeth Taylor. So she picks me up. Tim's with us. Shannon's with us. We go to Christian Audiger. We pull in the back. They obviously escort us in through the back. Paparazzi were like flies hitting the window. It sounded like bugs hitting a windshield. Boom, boom, with the cameras. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, they're coming after me. Here they come. So, no. She was very much, like I said, she was the queen of bling. And I'm really lucky today because I'm good friends with Landon Zimmer and Mark Schreiber and their whole family. I'm so blessed and grateful to be friends with them. But, they own Reach Jewelry. So they were nice enough today to give me some bling to sport for the podcast. So big shout outs to Reed's Jewelry today for that. But because she'd be so proud of me to rock out some pimp ass diamonds. What?
The reason I ask about her faith is because she did remain a member of the Jewish faith till she died. And
the funeral was very quick.
Right.
And everybody asked me, did you go to the funeral? Did you go to the funeral? I'm like, it was so set up years before it ever happened, to the fact that she was even late for her own funeral purposely.
Right. She
I'm
was
giving
late
me
to
chills
everything.
right now. Now you're giving me chills. You're giving me chills.
But yeah, she do you know about one thing I think is really, really fascinating?
I didn't go to the funeral. Like I said, I wasn't really necessarily invited. But Shannon and I did go to the mausoleum. Sorry. That old Elizabeth Taylor martini's kicking in. But we did go to see that, which is right next to Michael Jackson, but it is a huge, I think it's the Statue of David. I'm pretty sure it's a huge, but she's there, and it's pretty fascinating to go in that and see that, and you're not supposed to take pictures. I do have some. I'll have to dig them up for this. But yeah, her faith, I think, and she was born in England, so she was English. I think she was later on damed as well. But we didn't really talk about religion.
One thing, though, I do think is interesting that sort of ties into her faith was the I don't know if you've ever heard about what happened in Entebbe, Uganda in 1976 with the Jewish hostages at the airport there. That was, so it was an ongoing thing. And she, not publicly, but in private, went to the people that were holding them hostage, and she offered to give herself over
To let them
for
free.
their release.
Oh, my
They did
gosh.
not accept the deal, but that was something that happened and was not really talked about at the time because they didn't want it to be public. But yeah, just she
She was
had a
willing
very,
to give her own life.
right.
For
she
other
just had a
people.
very giving heart, it seems. Obviously, with all the AIDS
Ampar.
research and yeah.
I mean, and then her own Elizabeth Taylor Foundation.
Did she ever? Yeah, I know you said she didn't really talk about the past very often, but did she ever mention any performances that meant a lot to her? Any movies? Anything?
Gosh, I know that she was. There was something that she had mentioned about after the passing of Michael Todd, that going into this like dark part of her life where she had to fulfill these contracts with MGM. I mean, she still had contracts she had to finish, and then the whole thing with Cleopatra got put on pause for like 2 years. I mean, that must be so stressful to have that sort of calamity happen, and then like have these obligations, and then you kind of just want to give up on everything, because I think at some point she really just didn't care about fame. Fame came, that's all she knew, was being famous. So it's nothing that was like something she acquired. It was like from coming out the gate, she was always famous. I think she just really enjoyed being an actress, but being forced into some of these roles like Butterfield 8, which was like a call girl movie about her being a prostitute, and I think some of those didn't really reflect her personally, but there's something. The summer. What was it? The summer.
Suddenly Last Summer.
So Tennessee Williams.
That's a great film.
It's so crazy. She did win an Oscar for that one.
Yeah.
And so I think that was one that they said, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And she still did it. And it was, what it's about. And I'm not going to go into that right now.
The end is insane.
It's very graphic. It's very deep and dark, very dark film. And I did go to the Bucky Stein film, or Bucky Stein Theater at Thalian, and see it over there. And I went, obviously, because I knew Elizabeth Taylor was the original actress for that role. And to see him put it on locally was just fascinating, because it was like such a disgusting, you just don't think about things like that. I mean, like carnivore people, like, is that what you call them? Meat people?
Like cannibals.
Cannibal.
Yeah.
Cannibals. Anyway, so I think she had to do some roles that she had obligated herself through contracts, and the ones that she had to do, she hated. Like I said, I kind of coming on as a new friend of hers back then that had no idea about her films. I mean, I would love to say Count on the Hot Tin Roof is my favorite, because she was spicy, she was sexy, she was like in her prime. She was just like that movie really just, it's twisted too. It's got its twists and turns. And it seems like she always had a way of like having this, somewhat dark. I mean, you had Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And I'll tell you the truth, Zach, I feel like she was just drunk as hell during that whole film. Her and Richard, I felt like, were just wasted. Because, like, I have my drunk demon moments when I drink, and I think she was pulling out that character through alcohol. That's just my own opinion.
Right. Yeah, no, that movie is definitely visceral. It's just two people in a room arguing. And
fuck yeah, I hate you. Yeah. Throwing glasses at each other, and anyway.
Yeah. And another thing, one of the last questions I want to ask is, what personal memories of Elizabeth do you just think of often? Like,
gosh, that ride through Bel Air. I mean, to her house. I mean, she was literally like, to sit there and hold her hand in the back seat of a Maybach, and to look into her eyes, literally, like we are like looking at each other, and we were just admiring one another. I mean, I think she might have been admiring for other reasons, admiring me because maybe I reminded her of Montgomery or someone else, or, and I was looking at her because I was like, wow, she really does have purple eyes. You know what I mean? So it was pretty wild because, but we did. I mean, when she loved, and she was very sincere, a very genuine person. And I think she was born into acting. So it wasn't like she wasn't like these nowadays with reality shows and, people that, sort of get off to a late start. I mean, she was the epitome of Hollywood when Hollywood was cool.
Yeah, her early roles like National Velvet. People forget she was a child actress and she was.
Those horse movies. I mean, she was really riding those horses too. I mean, she was doing her own stunts too. If you think about it.
Did she ever talk about? I do wonder. Were her and Mickey Rooney close? Do you know? Did she ever talk about him?
No, I don't. Mickey Rooney doesn't really ring a bell. A lot of things about her and I relationship. I did sign on confidentiality agreements every time I came and left that house, and so I think I blanked out a lot of stuff because I just knew that I wasn't supposed to really talk about things. And even right now, it's all very like I haven't given any like really some of the things, I don't know. Again, I always have to kind of filter in my brain before I say stuff about her because she was such a classy person, and to be known as like the most beautiful woman in the world is sort of like, beyond me. I mean, she touched me in so many ways. I mean, like I said, we'd watch Law and Order. That was her show. I mean, I would bring her to go sliders from the Abbey, and we'd sit there and just eat. And she loved Johnny Love vodka. It was a passion fruit flavored vodka made in San Francisco. And I'd smuggle it in, and we'd make drinks and eat candy corn and watch TV. And I mean, we just really had something special. And I said before in the other interview, it's that she really, a lot of people, Colin Farrell, I mean, which she became friends with later in her life, which I'd love to meet Colin at some point and compare stories, because that'd be cool. Because he, about the same time her and I were hanging out, she was hanging out with him too. And she had a thing, I think, for dark-haired gentlemen. I think she liked the dark-haired men. You don't really see her much with blondes. No offense to blonde men. But
that's why it didn't work out with Paul Newman and Cat on a Hudson.
Yeah.
But is there anything else you just want to say about your relationship with her before we close?
So I like to say, I've been through a lot of this. Having the close relationship that I did have with her has also, I haven't paid some consequences. That's a stretch. But what I have had is there's been some jealousy. There's been some things in the tabloids and the news and with the lawsuit with this picture. I lost a lot of friends from the Abbey. I mean, that was my family. That was like, I mean, I worked there for a very long time. I took breaks because my job was very social, and I met a lot of celebrities. My job was to take care of the celebrities that came in there. I mean, everybody from Zac Efron to, Lisa Vanderpump to whoever else. I mean, I met Cheryl Tiegs. I did, on the wall, we've got Paris Hilton. We've got Lauren Conrad. I met Lady Gaga in Palm Springs. That was a white party thing. Jeffrey Sanker, God bless him, has passed away a couple of years ago. But through the years, I'm blessed. I got to meet so many interesting people. I mean, from Eve the rapper, she was awesome. There was just so many people. It's hard to even. Big shout outs to Joe Francis. I was buddies with him back in the day. I mean, people could slap me for saying that, but because Girls Gone Wild, things have changed quite a bit. It's not. We were living in a different time back then, so it's like, don't judge me for what happened back then. That was just the life we lived. It was what was going on. But yeah, I was able to meet Kathy Ireland, what a cool, sweet woman, and she really opened my eyes up to a lot of fascinating experiences, and for that I will always be eternally grateful. And she's around, and I think I didn't have the chance to say it on the news, and I think this is what I was talking to the girl. I was like, oh shit, there was something I wanted to say. She is my guardian angel. I mean, she is around. She is everywhere I go. She's pops up. She's here and there. Her pictures, I could be in Puerto Vallarta at her mansion there. Me and KT went and stayed at for my birthday, that Richard bought her as a birthday present. I mean, how amazing to, here's a birthday present. Here's a mansion in Puerto Vallarta. He also bought her a 29 karat ring. And, if you watch the Lost Tapes that just came out on HBO, he says he didn't want to buy her a 30 carat because that was just vulgar. 29 point something was just enough. That was classy. She called it her ice skating ring. But we're talking about somebody that really just, she had a full life. And when people say they had a full life, she really did. I mean, she really had a full life. And for me to have a small little dot of that is just something I'll never be able to describe in full.